Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. Just out of curiosity, by show of hands, how many of you have or have had mothers? Raise your hand.
If you don't raise your hand, there's a problem.
You know, by virtue of having a mom, you kind of become an expert on moms. You might be a mom, but that doesn't mean that you are an expert by virtue of having kids. No, because you've watched your mom. Probably the single greatest influence in your life. You have an idea about what being a mom is all about. For many of you, your mom brought you into this world. Now, I say for many of you because maybe you were adopted, and the woman that chose you and raised you, you call your mom. But it doesn't matter, your mom, whoever that is somebody who has nurtured you, who held you the first time that you took breath. Your mom was the one who first fed you. Your mom was the one who told you you were special, even though you didn't do anything to deserve being called special. Your mom was the one who wiped your rear end when no one else would do it, who cleaned up your vomit when your dad wouldn't, who got you ready for the first day at school, dressed you up and made you look really good. And then your mom was the same one who didn't say one word to you your last day of your high school day when you looked like a slob. Your mom is that one who always seemed to be glad to see you, who would make your meals, do your dishes, clean your clothes. Your mom was the one who would spit into a napkin and wipe the stuff off of your face. And so we set aside this day every year to honor moms. And there's got to be a job description someplace that suggests that these are the things that moms do. Dads might do some things, but moms, it's a little bit different. And so we kids set aside this day to honor moms because we have stuff that we know we did to our moms, that we carry a level of guilt in our lives. And so we make this day the #1 card giving day of the year, the #1 flower giving day of the year, the busiest day at restaurants of the year, and the day of the year where the most collect calls are made long distance. It's the truth. Moms and dads are different. At least they are in my family. And to illustrate, let me tell you a story. Back in 2010, when we were going to send our kids off to college, we packed up the car and we got a van and we put all their junk in it and we headed down south. And we dropped our oldest son off down in Orange County. And then we dropped our second oldest in Ventura County. And then on the way home, I was beaming. I was so excited to come home, to my home, where my sodas would be in the refrigerator. And I would know my leftovers were going to be there, and I would know where my television remote was going to be. I knew all of that now. And I knew, too, that I could walk around the house now in my underwear if I wanted to. And I knew I wasn't having to stay up at all hours of the night waiting for a kid to come home. And I knew that the bathroom that the kids would use was going to be clean. So I was excited. And then I look over at my wife sitting next to me, the mother of my children. And she had tears streaming down her face. And evidently, she didn't share the same joy that I did. And at least for me, that moment defined at least what's different in my life between moms and dads. It's not that all moms are emotional. It's not that all dads like to walk around the house in their underwear, though most of them do. It's that moms have a special attachment to these kids, to these human beings. they brought into the world. And I would suggest and say over and over again that I acknowledge being a mom is not easy. It can be really hard work. Research shows that moms feel a greater responsibility for the raising of their kids, for their well-being, for keeping the family schedule, for being proactive in their education, for getting them to places, and for attending to their emotional needs. And on top of that, many moms also have jobs. And on top of that, many moms are married, and marriages take work. And so the stress seems to mount. But it gets even more dicey if the mom is a single parent. Then the stress goes through the ceiling. Maybe one of the greatest fears that moms have, and dads have this too, but I don't think it's as great as the moms, is forgetting their children. Of losing them, going shopping and having them run off, or looking outside and not seeing them in the neighborhood. I was a victim of being lost as a child. Our family was traveling from Wisconsin to California. We stopped at a park in Bemidji, Minnesota, and they forgot me. They took off without me. So I grew up with that stigma, and I knew that I could push the guilt button pretty quick in my mom by simply saying, hey, remember that time when you forgot me in a park in Bemidji, Minnesota? Later in my life, she would respond, and there were days that we wished we did. So I tell you that because I had a conversation with a mom not so long ago who told me about this guilt in her life for having forgotten her kids at a school event. You know, she thought that the husband was supposed to pick up the kids, but in reality, she acknowledged she forgot. And she felt like such a bad parent. Have you ever had those feelings? And probably the only moment of clarity and any sense of wisdom that I've ever had came in that moment. I was able to say to her, I hope you just take it easy on yourself for a moment. I said, I want you to remember there's a passage in the Bible that is especially for you. And I told her it's Luke chapter 2, verse 44. And if you're a mom or a dad, you can go ahead and write that down in your sermon outline, Luke 2, 44. It's really an important passage. So I tell her, you got to remember that passage. She says, I don't know what that means. I said, well, do you remember the story when Jesus was little and he and Mary and Joseph had to travel from Nazareth up in the north and down to Jerusalem for a Holy Family event, and on the way back, do you remember the story where they left him behind? I said, so this is what Luke chapter 2, verse 44 says, assuming that Jesus, who was 12 years old at this point, was in the group of travelers, they, Mary and Joseph, went a day's journey. Then they started to look for him. Can you imagine the conversation that went on between the two of them? I thought you had them. No, not my turn. Your job. So they had to travel all the way back to Jerusalem in order to find Jesus, which, to put in context, would be like traveling from Tulare County all the way to Las Vegas to look for a kid that you left at a fast food place there. So I said to this distraught mom, look, put things into perspective. Lighten up on yourself. I mean, you only left your kids at a school event for what, a couple of hours? Mary lost the Son of God for a couple of days. Parenting is not easy. Mistakes get made. Moms and dads do things unintentionally, maybe sometimes even intentionally, that complicate the parenting process, and in the process complicate kids' lives. And that's just a simple fact of life. We all all of us are children who grew up with imperfect parents. Parents who tried to do their very best, but even though they did their best, it was imperfect. It's a hard job, especially for moms. So what do we do about that? Well, one thing that a lot of people do is they hide the fact that they're imperfect. They try to put on a good face. They try to paint a rosy picture of life and the family, and they want other people to think that everything is great. These are the folks that send out those Christmas cards every year with a picture of a happy family, and then there's a note inside to tell about all the wonderful accomplishments that the kids have had during the year. You know those letters, don't you? And yet I know of a mom who suffers with depression, seasonal depression at Christmas time, largely because these letters that she gets and these pictures of these wonderful families, because her family is not wonderful. There is something in us that generally does not like to show our vulnerability. We think that if other people know that we are mess-ups and make mess-ups, that they're going to think less of us, that they might gossip about us. Maybe we'll lose a certain level of social prestige. Maybe we won't get invited to the parties. And I think that when that happens, when we begin to become experts at hiding the truth about us, something goes on inside of us. Something begins to erode. In fact, something begins to die. I was at a pastor's conference this past week. This is a conference where pastors from the largest Lutheran churches all across the United States gathered together, and in one of the sessions we talked about the level of pain and suffering and hurt that exists in people's lives, and especially that level of hurt and pain as it relates to family struggles, and how people hold that stuff inside. And the speaker indicated, he said, studies show that that a lot of times moms and dads, they feel so bad, so guilty about things that happened in the past, that they carry within them the same symptoms of post-traumatic stress that people who come back from war scenes have. Incredible pain and loss. Parental PTSD, they said. My sense is that our culture encourages this. My sense is that we live in a culture that encourages us to put on a happy face, to send out Christmas cards indicating that everything is great. A culture where only the best students rise up to get the best scholarships and go to the best schools. A culture where the teenager with the most popularity is the one who is sure to go to the prom. A culture where the highest achievers get the promotions. A culture where only the strongest, only the wealthiest, only the best socially connected are the ones who make the grade. And see, I fear that living with secrets of failures in the past and the feeling as if we are failures, our soul begins to take a hit. There comes a time to tell the truth. And the truth is, we're not perfect. And the truth is, we've messed up as moms and dads. And the truth is, we've messed up as kids, too. And the big part of that truth is just simply to acknowledge we can't go to the past and fix what we broke. And so there's always this constant reminder that we're not good enough. And so, into this messed up world, Jesus came. I mean, Jesus knew what messed up was all about. His parents had messed him up. I can't help but wonder in my twisted mind how many times Jesus, as a teenager, said to Mary, "Hey, do you remember the time that you left me in Jerusalem?" But Jesus chose not to leave this world messed up, but to bring healing, bring hope. to bring forgiveness. You know, for Jesus, the past no longer has power over us. Because in Jesus, we're given new life and we're given hope. Something tells me that when honesty is shared between people, hope is born. When conversations of revealing vulnerabilities take place, I believe Christ is there in the midst. A little truth-telling is good not only for the one who has to tell the truth, maybe even better for the one who hears the truth. So I don't know. Maybe this Mother's Day is a day to tell the truth. Maybe a child says to a mom or to a dad, or maybe a mom or dad says to a child, just want to let you know how much I love you and how much I am sorry for the ways that I disappointed you and hurt you. Would you forgive me? The Apostle Paul writes this letter to the church in Corinth. And it is fascinating the way that he begins this letter. He wants them to know right off from the very beginning that he's not perfect. So he writes in the first chapter, "We do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, of the affliction we experienced in Asia, for we were so utterly, unbearably crushed that we despaired of life itself." If you ever have thought that Paul is this great giant of faith, well, guess what? He got to a point in life where he was done with life. He was in despair. He was giving up. I mean, who would say that in the opening sentence of a letter? But then Paul goes on in the 4th chapter, and he says, we have this treasure. What is this treasure? Well, the treasure is Jesus. The treasure is Jesus Christ, who died and was risen. The treasure is the good news of the gospel of Christ, that in Christ there is hope and forgiveness and new life. We have this treasure, says Paul, in jars of clay. Not richly adorned boxes, not beautiful china, bone china vases. No, in simple, everyday, cheap earthenware. We have this treasure in jars of clay, so that it may be clear that this extraordinary power belongs to God, does not belong to us. Now that's truth-telling. Makes me remember of a story about a nicely ordained or set-up house, kind of house that, well, many of you probably live in, has beautiful things all over the house, mementos, keepsakes, things that remind you of that which is most valuable to you. Maybe the things don't promote value of money, but they're value of memory. They connect you to who you are by virtue of things that have been given, handed down from one generation to the next. And one of those items is an earthenware jar, an antique, an amphora, coming from Greek tradition, highly valued in the family, but one day, said amphora was the victim of a game of catch between children, an errant throw, and a broken jar in pieces. No chance to repair, no chance to replace. And in its broken state, the children make a tearful confession to their mom. Now, moms, most moms, many moms at this point would allow an emotional response to take over. My amphora, how could you? You know the rules about playing catch outside where these treasures are located. But she caught herself, and in a moment of grace in the presence of sorrowful and sorrowful kids, she went and placed the amphora up straight again. She went into the kitchen. She lit a candle. She placed the candle inside the amphora. And she said to her children, An unbroken jar is incapable of shedding light. But only a broken jar can reveal the light that exists through its cracks. Isn't that the way it is with our lives? Isn't that the way it is with our parenting? That we who make mistakes, who mess up, in our vulnerable and truth-telling moments, allow the grace of God to live in us and through us. Why? Because we have this treasure, Jesus himself, in jars of clay, so that it would be abundantly clear that whatever good comes from us, including whatever good comes from our parenting, comes not from us, but from the one who gives us life and hope and grace. Hallelujah. Jesus is risen and he lives in you. Let his light so shine through your cracks. Amen.
Amen.
The peace of the Lord be with you always. I invite you to rise and share the peace of Christ with those